Hello, hello, hello. Here we are. Oh, it worked well that time. Lindsay Searchwell here again. Let me just go live on Instagram. Yep, I'm going live. I'm here again today, day 92. Yes. Today we're going to talk about the role of genetics in hoof health and how much does genetics really impact hoof health, and how can we adjust for care if we need to for different genetic traits. So that's what we're going to look at today. It's a common belief that horses have had their feet bred off them. Have you heard that? Have you heard that tale that horses have had their hoof bred off them? Is it true? And more importantly, how do we adjust our care for horses that might have different genetic traits, and what might they be? So we're going to unpack this myth, explore the role of genetics, and understand how we can help the hoof thrive no matter what the gene decides and what the genes it carries. Okay, so let's have a look at how many people are already here. Loads of you. Dawn's here. Hello. Phoenix Friends and Family. Lisa Charles here. Hello, everyone. Maylin's here. Suzanne Scheid's here. Alex is here. Heather Swithenbank is here. Hello. Undercover Carnivore is here. In the back. Jenny Arkenstrom is here. Hello. We Love Pets 100 is here. Tara's here. Hey, nice topic. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to give it justice, but we'll give it a go. Vivian Ulrich is here. Hello. Ramon is here. Hi. Nikki says hello. We Love Pets says, I have heard Morgans are known for really good feet, but not bred off them. Oh, you hear that when people talk about thoroughbreds a lot. Oh, my horse has got weak feet because he's had them bred off them. Let's explore. Remember to like the live, people. Remember to give me a thumbs up or subscribe if you're not subscribed. Laurie's here. Hello from Oregon. All right, now let us get into it. I want to talk about this common phrase that we hear a lot. Well, I hear it a lot. The horse has had their foot bred off them, or I read it a lot. Oh, my thoroughbred can't go barefoot because their foot has been bred off them. And you stare at these people and think, right, because this is an oversimplified myth and it gets passed around a lot. It's simply not true. Horses have been selectively bred for thousands of years for various traits that they have. Speed for speed, right? Yeah. And for strength, for the cold-blooded, the warm-blooded, the sports horses, the hot-blooded, temperament. But when it comes to hooves, when it comes to hooves, horses haven't really lost their ability to grow and maintain healthy hooves. In fact, the hoof is designed to be incredibly resilient on all breeds. It's meant to be adaptable, and it is self-sustaining if all of those breeds are allowed to do what they're meant to do, which is march around as much as they can and self-trim. It's a rare thing nowadays, hence the reason we encourage lots of movement, and hence the reason we encourage tracks. But here's the thing, conformation can play a role in how the hoof grows and behaves because of the upper body above the foot. The foot shapes itself depending on the gait, which is determined by the biomechanics, which is determined by that horse's conformation. But we can also affect that by doing the wrong things to the foot. Genetic traits are not the reason horses cannot go barefoot. The real issue comes from when we interfere with the hoof's natural development and biomechanics that are in response to that horse's gait, that horse's conformation. And when we impose our external ideals, support, shoes, etc., or incorrect trimming, as well as for aesthetics, because we think that they might be a little bit too pigeon-toed, or they might be going that way instead of that way. They might be toed out. They might have too much flair on one side or the other. We might end up with what looks like a more club foot on one, high-low. And oftentimes we are blaming that, definitely always blaming the horse, and nobody ever looks at the person that has been doing the trimming. And the problem with horses and hoof care is loads of people can touch a horse's foot over its lifetime. By the time a horse reaches maturity, they could have had several hoof care professionals, several, more than several, they because owners move places, they fall out with people, they don't like people might be too expensive, they might think that, you know, that you're going to use somebody that a friend is using, and it goes on. Rarely do people stick with one person, and that's one of the big problems in hoof care, is that you don't know who to blame, frankly, because everybody's taking their slice of that horse's foot. They're taking a bit more toe off, and some leaving a little bit more heel, and some leave the bars and some take the bars, and it's all going all around. Everybody's trying slightly different things, and that is the real issue. We're interfering with the hoof's natural development and biomechanics. So no, the hoof hasn't been bred off the horse or bred out of them. It's just that modern practices like excessive trimming and shoeing have compromised the hoof's natural ability to self-correct itself and maintain balance. And I've said this many times. Ooh, I have a white blob on my shirt. Sorry about that. Cover my white blob up. I've said this many times, that you, I think it's toothpaste, you dribbling. It's the age, you know, this is what happens as I get older. I've said this many times to you that if you look at a foot and if you trim it incorrectly, you set it off on the wrong trajectory and it keeps growing, right? And so once it does that, if you slightly unbalance those heels, or you don't quite get that dorsopalmar balance, or you take more toe and therefore affect hoof growth rates, that horse's foot is going to grow in that way. And as it gets longer, it's going to really accentuate the problems that hoof was set to do. Horses can, running around on tarmac and concrete and flat surfaces and hard surfaces, can do a certain amount of leveling if you've not quite got your balance correct, your heel to heel and your heel to toe. They'll do a certain amount of leveling, but the hoof is really hard and incredibly responsive. And so unfortunately, if you are quite, you know, if you're out on your trim, you are going to set that foot off into a different trajectory. And when you come back to trim it again, you're confused with what you're looking at, and then you set it up for going incorrectly again. So it does this, it goes off on all these different paths. And then we blame the horse. We blow, oh no, bred the foot off him. We blame the horse, when in actual fact, you've got to blame the several people that have touched those horses' feet and the fact that the owner didn't understand anyway in the first place, all chasing aesthetics until at the end of the day, one final day down in the future, we go, oh my God, my horse has got navicular. Oh my God. And they blame it on genetics. Oh my God, my horse is now, you know, rotated P3 and there's nothing underneath P3. It's sunk down through the hoof. And it was the genetics, poor genetics, that gave him those systemic issues in the first place. No, stop. That's not what's happened at all. That path down the middle, that very balanced hoof, the one that the feet should be on, and they veer off those paths, is all caused by human beings. If genetics can play a role, what traits should we be aware of? Well, conformation and bone structure do affect the hoof to some degree. They're not necessarily flaws. It's how we manage those traits that really, really does matter. For conformation, for instance, some horses are actually bred with conformation that can make their hooves more prone to specific issues. Thoroughbreds, which are naturally, or racing horses, standardbreds, saddlebreds, horses which have naturally, not all of them, but some of them, majority of them, naturally lower heeled horses. No horse has a high heel. Don't ever get drawn into that. They don't. But some have naturally lower heels than others. And we're only talking centimeters different. We're not talking inches different. But these horses may have lower heels. They may appear to have wider feet, flatter feet. They appear to have less concavity than others. Some appear to have because their angles of their P3, their dorsal face of P3, can be different from front to back, and different from breed to breed, and different between breeds. But these are all common things that Mother Nature has no problem dealing with. And some of these issues are, unfortunately, that they are not born with. They are created by what people do to their feet. This isn't a barrier to barefoot. This is not an excuse. And we should stop using genetics as an excuse, because it isn't the excuse. These traits don't mean that the horse can't have healthy functioning hooves. They just simply need precise, careful, thoughtful trimming and time to allow their hooves to adapt and regain the balance they need, because they didn't get it in the first place. And we see loads of horses. In fact, let's face it, the majority of horses on our books that come to us have not been balanced correctly and trimmed to their own natural parameters. So we have to set off on a journey of bringing them back down to where they need to be. And we hope, upon hope, that there has been no damage to the foot in the meantime. If we have, well, we gotta deal with that as well. So when we give it time, when we give it patience, and we give it proper care, most horses with problem feet or problem conformation will just simply find their natural balance. And but they won't if you don't follow their foot, right? And people say, "Oh, treat the horse as an individual." They don't. They don't. That's just a cop out. They don't do that. They are looking for aesthetics. If you treat them as an individual, you end up with feet that we trim, right? The feet that the shapes and what you see. When you have horses with more stocky or larger frames like draft breeds, often they have larger hooves to match. They don't necessarily have big, long toes, but they have wider hooves. These larger hooves, my friends, and might need a little bit more attention to detail, especially when it comes to maintaining balance through trimming. One of the reasons why is because they're difficult to trim, because they're big, heavy feet, big, heavy legs. Horses might not be so flexible, don't necessarily like to stand while they're being trimmed for very long. And the person who's doing it is a lot of foot to take off, and they're really hard. They don't quite take off enough like they should, and they leave things because it's hard work, and they're a bit knackered, and lots of people don't even use nippers, which is crazy. And before you know it, this hoof is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more inflexible and more inflexible and more of a problem and more of a problem. And before you know it, the horse has got CPL, or it's got, which is chronic progressive lymphedema, which is where they can't move the lymph, and they have protein buildup, and they start getting folds in their skin, and it starts becoming an issue. That's not just from standing around. That's also from the fact that their feet haven't been trimmed correctly too. But being that shape, that size, it's not a limitation. It's just simply something you need to manage better. These horses actually often do incredibly well, the drafty horses, barefoot, because they have a more robust hoof structure naturally, but they also can get lots of arthritic problems because their feet just simply aren't trimmed correctly. When we have differences in growth rates, in hoof growth rates, when it comes to horses' feet, you will hear that some horses will have faster or slower growing hooves based on their genetics, but that's not what we see. We see horses that'd be like saying, well, that mare's got slower growing hooves and that gelding's got faster growing hooves, and we're going to send them both on a 100k trip together. Oh, she wore hers off because they were no. That's not what we see. What we see is they respond to their environment. They respond to what's going on in their environment. And these are differences. All of these differences, we can wear weak feet, which we think they're going to be weak feet, but they're not. Brittle feet, but not necessarily brittle. Diet and management, of course, is going to play a role in the strength of that horn quality. But all of this stuff is things that we can manage. they're not indicators that a horse can't go barefoot. And slipping down to the whole role of genetics and it's caused by it's just a cop out. It's a massive cop out by people who don't understand the natural foot. Okay, let's have a quick shout out to who we've got here. Bridget's here, Carly's here. Hello, my darling. I have seen your message. I know that you've messaged me. I'm going to get back to you. Our shoemaker is here. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. Lisa's here. Hello, my darling. Stella's here. Have I said hello to Ali? Angela Medler's here. Tractor Nature is here. Sue Mitchell's here. Caroline Schillig. Oh, gosh, I've got to go backwards. Thorax Gargoyle. I always think that's funny. Can I try and cover that up? Let's just put that there. Don't look at it. Now you're all going to look at it. Nikki Shaw says, numbering the lives makes me realize how fast this year is going by. I know, right? I know. Louise Yasinchuk says, finally caught the live since the time has changed. Hope you're all doing well. We are. Nice to see you back. Undercover says, I don't know much about it, but what about hoof wall separation in Connemara's? Now there's a thing. Here's a really interesting thing. Again, diet management and good trimming trumps genetics every time. Because when we see these horses with these problems, what we see are horses with feet that have not been correctly trimmed, that have not had the correct diet and management. You put them on all of those things and you start to watch the genetics take a back seat. Okay. It just is every time. Whenever I see these horses, whenever I see these Connemara's, and I've had those on my books too, and the excuse comes out, you like, and you look at the feet, you're like, who's trimming them? I'm not saying genetics isn't there. I'm not saying that isn't an issue. I'm not saying that gene isn't there, but it's all about switching them on and off. Okay. If they are switched on, but it's how you work with that. And you need to make sure that the foot is fully balanced throughout that horse's life, not only throughout its horse's life, but making sure that whatever that discipline that horse does, you got to keep on top of it. It just means they need to be managed better. That's all it means. It doesn't mean they're going to have poor feet. You just need to manage them better. Okay. Where are we? The vet who was doing my vetting asked if I'd had the pony tested. I pointed out he was a fell pony. Monica, hello. Good to see you. We Love Pets 1000 says, one of the HMB pros picked up a very slight difference in wall height balance 1 to 2 weeks ago, but it was so muddy that I haven't been able to get a good look ever since. It is definitely more obvious now. Right. So that needs to be kept on top of. We need to look at that, don't we? And need to make sure that that doesn't go out of control. Dawn says it doesn't matter what conformation a horse has. In the wild, hooves will adapt to give that horse the foot it needs. We need to do the same in our trimming. 100%. But we don't need to second guess the foot. No. We can't do that. No second guessing of the hoof. The hoof will show you what it needs and it will do it correctly. I mean, honestly, I don't know why we don't believe it. We think the hoof lies. We think that it lies to us. No. It can't possibly be right. It doesn't look right. It looks unbalanced from above. Don't ever do that. Never, ever think that feet, if they look unbalanced, they may be unbalanced when you pick them up, but usually, especially if they're with us, they just look unbalanced from the top because of the conformation. When you pick the foot up, it's beautifully balanced for when that horse puts its foot down. Where do you think all this nonsense came from and how horses land with people that haven't properly balanced horses' feet very precisely, and so they see all kinds of weird landings going on. Alex says 8 horses in my paddock from Percheron, from TB to Percheron, same trim, beautiful feet. And of course that confuses people because they think that we are a cookie cutter trim. Of course that's not the truth either. What we're doing is following that horse's natural parameters. Dawn says, I now realize that Woody's hooves were far too small. They are now twice as big, but most definitely not overgrown. That's wonderful. Okay. Susie says hello. Karen says hello. Alex says, I have a Connemara, got his feet great now. Perfect. Jeanette says, late again. We'll have to watch the replay. And Kate's And Kay has arrived with all her hearts. Okay, let's carry on then. So when does conformation become a problem? Is it a problem? This is where it gets interesting. Genetics might influence conformation, but again, it's when we interfere. And people don't even know that that's what they're doing. And it starts from the second they're born. When horses are all strapped up in the horses in their mum's womb, and they're all crumpled up, when they come out, they often look rather bizarre with their very, very long legs, which don't look straight. And the worst thing you can do with a foal is keep it confined in any area. Even if you think, oh, well, they've got that little bit of paddock on the side there. That's, yes, 40 by 40, that's enough. That which is, fair size. That'll do. And meters. And that's okay. That's quite massive. It's not big enough. They need to move and move and move and move. And of course, most people who have foals don't have that kind of land. And so then and especially those that are breeding for racing industry, they certainly don't. And those horses are confined in stables. It's one of the worst things the heinous crimes I see, and I hate it, is seeing a mare stood in a stable with her foal. You've got to get these animals out, and they've got to move. They've got, you get them on a track. Brilliant. Awesome. Get them moving with their mum. Get their mum going around looking for hay. The foal will go with it. It might look bizarre, but it's going to walk itself right in a few days. And they do. But the ones that don't, unfortunately, are the ones that are kept confined and they don't move. That horse's body is growing from the moment that it is conceived, and it is growing all the time. And the soft tissues are changing all the time. And soft tissues need the body to move in the way that those soft tissues are connected, so that they then get strong with the horse, with the foal. And so it starts from when they're very, very young, from the moment they're born. And we need to be on top of that. Many horses don't even get trimmed for the first 2 years of their life. Oh, they're only 2 years old. They've never really been trimmed, not really been handled, not really been told how to pick the feet up. And they're a bit like wonky donkeys on their feet, and already, because they weren't right, they let them get wrong, and then that's how the feet grew. And before you know it, you're looking at this foot that's just all over the place, and the horse is already getting issues. When a horse has got true conformation issues, again, when they might have one foot slightly turning out more than the other, they may have quite wide chests, they may have narrow chests, they may be cow-hocked, they may be base wide, they may have various things. They may look like they're slightly over at the knee. Again, that is something that does happen, but it shouldn't affect the feet. I tell you what, when people say, oh, when you've got various conformation issues, that horse is going to have arthritis when it gets older. Not necessarily. The only reason people say that is because that's what they see. But the reason they see that is because that animal has been suffering with those with incorrect hoof care issues all its life, with loads of people taking a pot shot at the hooves and doing it their way, which wasn't the same as the person before. It's a shit show. You hear me say that so many times. So the problem isn't the genetics, it's how we manage the hoof. If we trim a horse that has naturally low heels and we leave them with long toes, the long toe, low heel scenario where they're going into an NPA, we don't do that, by the way, just so that you know. Those horses are going to suffer with their bones, but with their bones, their joints, their soft tissue, but that wasn't their fault. That was the fault of the person fiddling about with their feet, who didn't understand balance. The people who take the toes off, the ones that try to make the feet not look pigeon-toed, try and straighten them up, those are the people that are disrupting the hoof's natural balance. And it goes on everywhere. If we try to fix feet by artificially doing things to it, we're not addressing the underlying cause. We don't need to address that cause, conformation, etc., genetics. They'll do that. We need to get out of the way and just keep that foot balance. We must not temporarily mask the symptoms and create more imbalance. That's a really bad thing to do. The hoof is more than capable of shaping itself and adapting to what it needs and adapting to that its owner's body and the way that its owner walks and the biomechanics. So the key is not to interfere, but to just remove the excess, whether that's excessive toe, incorrect heel height, unnecessarily high at the quarters, leaving the bars, etc. You've got to let the hoof function naturally and not get in its way. That's what's more important than anything else. The hoof can think for itself. I know it sounds crazy, but it can. Let's talk about a major point that is often overlooked. It can do its own thing. Oh my goodness, it so can. We just need to stand back. Oh, look at that. Look at the hoof changing. Isn't that crazy? Hooves come out of shoes and they've all been all neat and tidy and trussed up in the shoe, and the foot comes out, and within 6 weeks we're seeing flare, and the owner's freaking out because, oh my God, it wasn't there before. It's okay though, because the horse is getting sounder, isn't it? Well, yeah, but the feet look crazy. That's all right. They may not stay like that, but for right now, that horse needs his feet just like that. It doesn't need us to think for it. We often think we know better, that we need to constantly trim, correct, modify the hoof, make it look better. But when we let go of that belief, really let go of it, you can do that and trust the hoof to function on its own terms. Wow, you see amazing results, usually reflected in soundness. So the crux of the problem is that when we allow the hoof to shape itself, the conformation issues that we once thought were unsolvable actually begin to improve, because the hoof will naturally balance itself if we give it room to do so. Isn't that incredible? That's what Mother Nature designed. That's how clever she is. And that's where natural hoof care truly shines, you see, because it's not about fighting conformation or genetics. It's about supporting that natural balance, that natural shape, that natural wear, and letting the hoof tell you what it needs. That's the beauty of it. That's treating a horse as an individual and a foot as an individual. Okay, let's just do some. I've got to go and do a lesson right now, in fact. Okay, so can the folds in the skin improve when the feet start to be trimmed? Well, certainly you're going to help to improve drainage. And the answer to that is it depends how far it's gone, because it is progressive. But yes, you can hope that you certainly don't make it worse. Heather Sarah Lou talks about her Hamish's CPL improved in a recent post. Yes, go and have a look at what Sarah Lou put. That's important. Okay. Lutzita has also joined. All right, very quickly. Today's takeaway. Genetics might play a role, folks, in the horse's conformation, in how the hoof looks, the hoof structure, but it's how we manage that hoof that determines whether it thrives or whether it struggles, frankly. The hoof is more than capable of adapting and shaping itself. We just need to step back, get out of its way, and respect its natural abilities to do so. So for your mini challenge, I want you to think about your horse's conformation. We do this with the pros. I can't remember what module that we do it on, but we ask them to look at their horse's conformation, and we ask them to try and work out what that's telling them. What are the traits that you've been taught to fix in the hoof? Have you heard of that? How you fix certain things? Ask yourself, could these issues actually be helped if I just respected the hoof's natural design instead of trying to control it? Post your thoughts. Let's share for everyone to see. All right. Thank you for being here with me today. Thank you for liking, following, sharing, subscribing. Please give us a thumbs up. Please do that. Hit that notification bell so you get notified every time we go live. Remember, genetics don't determine your horse's hoof health. How we manage their care does. You are learning to help them work with their natural design. That's what you're doing, not against it. The Phoenix way is about keeping listening, keeping observing, keeping trusting the process. So keep going. You keep going, because you're doing an amazing job. And we love it. We love seeing them. Keep posting up. Since I did that live the other day, you've all started posting wonderful things. Do it. Everybody needs to see that. It's inspiring. Okay, I've got to go and do a lesson. Love you all. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Bye.